Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yatha Parakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Scha Shri Rubam Sagrajatam Saganaraganatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Paran Sahagana Lalita Shivishakam Vitam Scha Om Jnana Timaranda Shagana Ajana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah Gurva Bhistam Supurakam Garganara Sesha Sambhushitam Chintya Chintya Samastabeda Nipanam Shri Rupa Patanugam Govindam Vidam Ujwalam Bharatanam Bhakjan Vidam Sundaram Mande Vishwa Gurunsha Divyat Bhagavat Prem Noe Bija Pranam Devam Divyatanum Suchandra Varanam Balarka Chelanchitam Sandrananda Puram Sadeka Varanam Vairagya Vidyamburim Sri Siddhanta Nidhim Subhakti Lasitam Saraswatanam Baram Banditam Shubharam Madeka Sharanam Yashishvara Sridharam Manshakopatarubyasya Syakripa Sindhubhyavicha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah Namo Mahabaranyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namane Gauratavishe Namah. So we're hearing from Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita by Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, translation and commentary by Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. So this is Adi-lila chapter 16, the pastimes of the Lord in his childhood and youth. I'll start with verse... I'll start with verse number 27. Say Amshako Hitare Kore Namaskar Ja Shuni Digvijayi Koila Apana Dikar. Offering my obeisance to Srila Vrindavan Das Thakur, I shall try to describe that portion of the Lord's analysis which, when he heard it, made the Digvijayi feel himself condemned. So Mahaprabhu debated against a proud Digvijayi Pandit who traveled all over India, defeating people in debate and discussions on the scriptures and on poetry, and he came to Navadip, and this is the account which Krishnadas Kaviraj is giving about how that Digvijayi Pandit was defeated by Mahaprabhu. Jochnavati Ratri Prabhu Sishyagan Sanghe Vasijachan Gangatire Vidyar Prasange. Once on a full moon night, the Lord was sitting on the bank of the Ganges with his many disciples and discussing literary topics, because Mahaprabhu taught many students about Sanskrit grammar and poetry. Hinakali Digvijay Thahai Aila Gangare Mandanakore Prabhure Milila. Coincidentally, Keshav Kashmiri Pandit came there. While offering his prayers to Mother Ganges, he met Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Vasailatare Prabhu Adara Korea Digvijay Kohimane Avagya Korea. The Lord received him with adoration, but because Keshav Kashmiri was very proud, he talked to the Lord very inconsiderately. Vyakaran Paraha Nimai Pandita Tomaranam Balya Shastre Loke Tomara Kohe Gunagram. I understand that you are a teacher of grammar, he said, and that your name is Nimai Pandit. People speak very highly of your teaching of beginner's grammar. Vyakaran Madhya Jane Paraha Kalap Shunilun Funkite Tomar Sishera Sanlap. I understand that you teach Kalapa Vyakaran. I have heard that your students are very expert in the word jugglery of this grammar. Prabhu Kohe Vyakaran Parai Abhimana Kori Sishyate na buje ami bujaite nari. The Lord said, yes, I am known as a teacher of grammar, but factually I cannot impress my students with grammatical knowledge, nor can they understand me very well. Kahantumi sarvashastre kavitve praveen kahanami sabe sishu paruya naveen. My dear sir, whereas you are a very learned scholar in all sorts of scriptures and are very experienced in composing poetry, I am only a boy, a new student, and nothing more. Tomara kavitva kichu shunite hoiman kripa kore kore jari gangara varnan. Therefore, I desire to hear your skill in composing poetry. We could hear this if you would mercifully describe the glory of Mother Ganges. So, we also heard that Srila Sridhar Maharaj, he was very, very expert in defeating everyone in debate on any subject, but how he also asked, when people asked him to present something, he says, first you speak, you present your point of view, and then we will discuss. So Mahaprabhu is doing that also. That's part of how to proceed. Therefore, I desire to hear your skill in composing poetry. We could hear this if you would mercifully describe the glory of Mother Ganges. Shunya Brahman Garve Barniti Lagila Gati Ek Shata Shloka Gangara Varnila. When the Brahman Keshav Kashmiri heard this, he became still more puffed up. And within 1 hour, he composed 100 verses describing Mother Ganges. He's the Digvijayi Pandit Keshav Kashmiri. He's from Kashmir, and he's defeated everyone wherever he's gone. He's defeated them. And when he came to Navadip, all the other Pandits and scholars were so afraid of him that they just more or less nominated Nimai Pandit, who was a young teacher of grammar, and thought, well, if he gets defeated, it won't cast any aspersion on us, so we'll offer him. When the Brahman Keshav Kashmiri heard this, he became still more puffed up, and within 1 hour he composed 100 verses describing Mother Ganges. Shunya Korila Prabhu Bahuta Satkar Toma Sama Prativite Kavinahiyar. The Lord praised him, saying, Sir, there is no greater poet than you in the entire world. Tomara Kavita Shloka Bhujite Kara Shakti Tumi Balo Jana Arta Kimva Saraswati. Your poetry is so difficult that no one can understand it but you and Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning. Replying to Keshav Kashmiri sarcastically, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu indirectly minimized the value of his poetry by saying, yes, your compositions are so nice that no one but you and your worshipable mother, the goddess of learning, can understand them. Keshav Kashmiri was a favorite devotee of Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, but Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, as a master of the goddess of learning, has the right to speak sarcastically of her devotees. In other words, although Keshav Kashmiri was proud of being favored by the goddess of learning, he did not know that she is controlled by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself, because he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Okay. Eka shloka arta jari koranija muke shuni sab loka tave paiba bora suke. So this is very nice, and we see how the Digvijayi Pandit is just marching forward, not knowing what he's entering. Then Mahaprabhu says, but if you explain the meaning of one verse, we can all hear it from your own mouth and thus be very happy. Tabe Digvijayi Vyakaran Shloka Puchila Shata Shloka Ek Shloka Prabhuta Padila. The Digvijayi Keshav Kashmiri inquired which verse he wanted to explain. The Lord then recited one of the 100 verses Keshav Kashmiri had composed. Mahatvam Gangaya Sadatamidam Avati Nitaram Yad Esha Sri Vishnu's Charana Kamalotpati Subhaga Dvitiya Sri Lakshmi Ivasura Narar Archa Charana Bhavani Bhartur Ya Shirasi Vibhavati Adbhuta Guna. The greatness of Mother Ganges always brilliantly exists. She is the most fortunate because she emanated from the lotus feet of Sri Vishnu, the personality of Godhead. She is a second goddess of fortune, and therefore she is always worshipped, both by demigods and by humanity. Endowed with all wonderful qualities, she flourishes on the head of Lord Shiva. Glorification of the Ganga. Eshlokararta Kora Prabhu Jari Baila Vishmita Hoya Digvijayi Prabhure Puchila. When Lord Chaitanya asked him to explain the meaning of the verse, the champion, very much astonished, inquired from him as follows. Janjavata Praya Ami Shloka Parila Taramadya Shloka Tumi Kaiche Kante Koila. I recited all the verses like the blowing wind. How could you completely learn by heart even one among those verses? Prabhu kohe devera bare tumi kavibar I che devera bare ke ho hoy shrutidar. The Lord replied, by the grace of the Lord, someone may become a great poet. And similarly, by his grace, someone else may become a great shrutidar who can memorize anything immediately. Shrutidar, if he hears something one time, he can remember it. Shlokarar tohoila vipra payasantosh prabhu kohe kaha shloker kibagunadosh. Satisfied by the statement of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the Brahman Keshav Kashmiri explained the quoted verse. Then the Lord said, now kindly explain the special qualities and faults in the verse. So you know this is going to elicit some response. So now please explain the come. Thank you. Dhanyavad. So Mahaprabhu tells him, okay, that's very nice. I memorized this verse. Now please explain the good qualities of this verse and its faults, so you know that's going to elicit some response. Because the Brahman has already indicated that, oh, you are a teacher of beginning grammar, so that's very nice. I hear that your students are able to proceed very well with the word jugglery of Sanskrit that you've taught them. So the Brahman, Viprako he shloke nahi dosharabhas upama lankar guna kichu anuprash. The Brahman replied, there is not a tinge of fault in that verse. Rather, it has the good qualities in similes and alliteration. So it has nice analogies, similes, and it has alliteration, poetic repetition of sound throughout the verse. So, Prabhu Kohen kahijade na kora harosh kahatomar eshloke kiva achedosh. The Lord said, my dear sir, I may say something to you if you will not become angry. Can you explain the faults in this verse? Pratibar kavya tomar devata santoshe balomate vicharile jani gunak doshe. There is no doubt that your poetry is full of ingenuity, and certainly it has satisfied the Supreme Lord. Yet if we scrutinizingly consider it, we can both find good qualities and faults. So he's praising. I had a long time ago heard that one particular quality that exists in arguments or in debate in Bengal is like praising the opponent, but praising in such a way it's compared to pouring like sugar water on the roots of a plant by offering the praise, and then after the sugar water is poured on the roots of the plant, the ants will come and devour the so by offering some praise, it's actually setting up the person for defeat. So the Lord said, "My dear sir, if I may say something to you, if you will not become angry, may say something to you if you will not become angry. Can you explain the faults in this verse? Pratibhara kavya tomar devata santoshe balomate vicharile jani gunadoshe." There is no doubt that your poetry is full of ingenuity, and certainly it has satisfied the Supreme Lord. Yet if we scrutinizingly consider it, we can find both good qualities and faults. Tati balo kore shloka koraha vichar kavi kohe je kohile se vedasar. The Lord concluded, "Now therefore, let us carefully scrutinize in this verse." The poet replied, "Yes, the verse you have recited is perfectly correct. Vyakaraniya tumi nahi para alankar tumi ki janive e kabid verashar." You are an ordinary student of grammar. What do you know about literary embellishments? You cannot review this poetry because you do not know anything about it. Strong words. Prabhu Kohen Ateva Puchie Tomare Vichariya Gunadosh Buja Amare. Taking a humble position, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, "Because I'm not on your level, I have asked you to teach me by explaining the faults and good qualities in your poetry." You're right, it's beyond my accomplishments, so you please explain the good qualities and faults in this verse. Nahi pari alankar kori jache shravan tate shlokin deki bahu doshagun. I certainly have not studied the art of literary embellishments, but I have heard about it from higher circles, and thus I can review this verse and find in it many faults and many good qualities. Kavi kohe kahadeki kon gunadosh prabhu kohen kohe shuna na koriya rosh. The poet said, "All right, let me see what good qualities and faults you have found." The Lord replied, "Let me speak and please hear me without becoming angry. Pancha dosai shloke pancha lankar kramayami kohe shuna koraha vichar." My dear sir, in this verse there are 5 faults and 5 literary ornaments. I shall state them one after another. Kindly hear me and then give your judgment. Abhimurishta videyamsha duetai china viruda mati bhagna krama punarata doshatina. By hearing this analysis, let us also see if we can appreciate the deep understanding and of poetry of Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, who's writing of this, discussion. Amrishta videyamsa duetai china virudamate bhagnakrama punarata doshatina. In this verse, the fault of Abhimrishta videyamsa occurs twice, and the faults of virudamati bhagnakrama and punarata occur once each. Okay. Gangara Mahatva Shloke Mula Videya Idam Shabde Anuvad Pache Abhideya. Gangara Mahatva Shloke Mula Videya Idam Shabde Anuvad Pache Abhideya. The glorification of the Ganges, Mahatvam Gangaya, is the principal unknown subject matter in this verse. And the known subject matter is indicated by the word idam, which has been placed after the unknown. Okay? Roughly, idam means this. So you're giving something unknown, and then you're referring to that unknown as this. So he says, videya age kohe pache. So the glorification of the Ganges, Mahatvam Gangaya, is the principal unknown subject matter in this verse. And the known subject matter is indicated by the word idam, which has been placed after the unknown. So, I studied English. That was my major. So I know also in composition that, if you use a word like this with an unclear precedent, that's considered faulty grammar. So, videya age kohe pache kohilai anuvan e lagi shlokararta koreyache bad. Because you have placed a known subject at the end and that which is unknown at the beginning, the composition is faulty. And the meaning of the words has become doubtful. They call that an unclear antecedent. I guess that's antecedent or antecedent. But, it's coming before. And it's unclear what you're referring to when you say this. What is it you're referring to? Because you have placed a known subject at the end, idam, this, and that which is unknown at the beginning, the composition is faulty, and the meaning of the words has become doubtful. Anuvaram, anu kritvaiva, na videyam udirayat na'i, alabda spadam kinshit, kutrachit pratitishtati. Without first mentioning what is known, one should not introduce the unknown. For that which has known no solid basis can never be established anywhere. If you have to, the principal subject of the phrase or the paragraph should be known. Otherwise, what are you explaining? Without first mentioning what is known, one should not introduce the unknown, for that which has no solid basis can never be established anywhere. Dvitiya Sri Lakshmi Ihan Dvitiyat Yatva Videya Samasai Gona Hoila Shabdarta Gela Kaya. In the word Dvitiya Sri Lakshmi, a second all opulent goddess of fortune, the quality of being a second Lakshmi is the unknown. In making this compound word, the meaning became secondary and the originally intended meaning was lost. Tritiya Shabda Videya Taha Padila Samase Lakmira Samata Arta Korila Vinashe. Because the word Dvitiya, second, is the unknown, in its combination, in this compound word, the intended meaning of equality with Lakshmi is lost. Well, what do you mean by a second? What do you mean by a second Sri Lakshmi? What is that supposed to be meaning? Because the word Dvitiya, second, is the unknown. In its combination, in this compound word, the intended meaning of equality with Lakshmi is lost. Because you're saying a second Lakshmi, second Sri Lakshmi. What is the meaning of that? In what way? Avimvrishta videyamsa edo sharanam ara ek doshache shuna sabadam. Not only is there the fault of Vimvrishta Videyamsa, but there is also another fault, which I shall point out to you. Kindly hear me with great attention. Bhavani, Bhartri, Shabda, Dile, Paya Santosh, Viruna Mati Krit Nama E Mahadosh. Here is another great fault. You have arranged the word Bhavani Bhartri to your great satisfaction, but this betrays the fault of contradiction. Bhavani Shabde Kohe Mahadeva Grihini Tara Bharta Kohile Dvitiya Bharta Jani. The word Bhavani means the wife of Lord Shiva. That's what Bhavani means. She's the wife of Lord Shiva. But when we mention her husband, one might conclude that she has another husband. So Bhavani means the wife of Lord Shiva, but you have used the word Bhavani Bhartri. You're saying the wife of Lord, the husband of the wife of Lord Shiva. That sounds really terrible. Here is another great fault. You have arranged the word Bhavani Bhartri to your great satisfaction, but this betrays the fault of contradiction. Because we know Bhavani is the wife of Lord Shiva, but you're saying Bhavani Bhartri, you're saying the husband of the wife of Lord Shiva. Why would you say that? Bhavani Shabde Kohe Mahadeva Grihini Tarabarta Kohile Dvitiya Bharta Jani. The word Bhavani means the wife of Lord Shiva, but when we mention her husband, one might conclude that she has another husband. Otherwise, you don't have to say her husband, because you can say Lord Shiva, or you can say Shiva Patnira Bharta Iha Shunite Viruda Mate Krit Shabda Shastre Nahi Shuddha. It's like if I said the husband of the wife of Lord Shiva. Why would you ever say that? Why would you say the husband of the wife of Lord Shiva? So, Shivara Patnir Bharta Iha Shunite Viruda Mate Krit Shabda Shastre Nahi Shuddha. It is contradictory to hear that Lord Shiva's wife has another husband. The use of such words in literature creates the fault called Viruda Mati Krit. Let's see if we find what's the definition. Viruda Mati Krit, a statement of opposing elements or a contradiction. It is contradictory to hear that Lord Shiva's wife has another husband. The use of such words in literature creates a fault called Viruda Mati Krit. The composition, the order of the words creates not clarity, but contradiction. Brahmana Patnir Bhartara Haste Dehadan Shabda Shunite Hoy Dvitiya Bhartagyan. If someone says, place this charity in the hand of the husband of the wife of the Brahmin, when we hear these contradictory words, we immediately understand that the Brahmin's wife has another husband. Place this charity in the hand of the husband of the wife of the Brahmin. When we hear these contradictory words, we immediately understand that the Brahmin's wife has another husband. Otherwise, you just say, place this charity in the hand of the Brahmin. You wouldn't say, place this charity in the hand of the husband of the wife of the Brahmin. Vibhavati. So we understand that the Pandit has composed 100 verses in a very short period of time. So it's not extraordinary that there be some fault. And normally if somebody made such a composition, he would edit those things before presenting them. And I find with so many of the books that we published, they have this fault that they're edited. They're edited by the same person who has composed the books. And that means any inadvertent faults will not be detected. You should always have somebody edited a book that you write besides yourself. And I published one book, and I went through it so many times, and going through the body of the work and everything, And then it was published, and then after it was published, I discovered there was a spelling mistake in one of the headers on the pages. And I never saw that mistake because I never was really going. I was going over the body of the work. It didn't occur to me that there might be a mistake in one of the headers of the pages, like the headers of this page here. On the one side, on the left-hand side, it says, has the page number Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita and then Adi 16. And then on the right side, it has 69, the pastimes of the Lord in his childhood and youth. So Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita is centered, and that's the header. And on the other page, on the right-hand page, because you always have one header on the left and one header on the right, the pastimes of the Lord in his childhood and youth. That's the title of the chapter. But imagine if you had a spelling mistake on the header, it's going to be repeated on every page throughout the chapter. And that's what I had. So, but if you give the book to actually an editor, the editor will say, oh, Maharaj, here's a spelling mistake. So I've found that repeatedly in many of our publications, that you can't edit your own work, not successfully. You should have an editor go over your work. Then if something slips by, okay, it escaped under the radar. And that's also not so uncommon. But at least by having an editor, you have some degree of success. Vibhavati kriyaya vakya sangapuna visheshan adbhuta guna punar atadarshan. The statement by the word vibhavati flourishes as complete, qualifying it with the adjective adbhuta guna, wonderful qualities, creates the fault of redundancy. So to show this, I knew one person, not necessarily in our mission, but this person was a Sanskrit editor, knew Sanskrit, published Sanskrit. But sometimes when that person gave initiation to persons, he would give ladies names that were clearly masculine, like he gave the name Madhusudan Dasi. Well, I understand Madhusudan refers to the, who is the fighter or killer or whatever of the Madhu demon. And then that's going to be a Dasi? That's a little strange to hear. It's like it would be like having a woman named Virabahu, powerful arms or something, like that. Valiant fighter. We would not normally give that name in initiation to a lady. We give a name which is more feminine. And many times I had to correct in the past names of people that were giving these names to persons that was completely strange. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Well, those were given as those were given as joke names. There was one person I knew. He really, some persons, he wasn't so enchanted about giving some persons initiation, and he gave them names like Chapati Das. Now, what kind of a name is Chapati Das? It's obviously given in jest. Oh, you're going to close the curtain.
Sri Sri Guru Garanga Gandharva
Lafra means a mixture of vegetables. Lafrananda, one who gets happiness by a mixture of vegetables. Vivavati kriyaya vakya sangapuna visheshan adbhuta guna e punar atadarshan. The statement by the word vivavati, flourishes, is complete, qualifying it with the adjective of adbhuta guna, wonderful qualities, creates the fault of redundancy. Okay. All these things can also be in the category of glorification by faint praise. This is horrible, and it often occurs. It'd be like if you had the president of the country visiting, and you said, and now here we have the person who's maintaining all the prisons in the country. Well, he's the commander-in-chief, of course, but is his glory that he's the maintainer of all the prisons in the country? He's the commander-in-chief of the whole country. You don't introduce him by some sub-quality. So that's called glorification by faint praise, and that's the way. It's another way of criticizing somebody. If I said, like, oh, here we have with us this and this person, and she sometimes dresses very nicely, how would that be taken? How would that sound? That's glorification by faint praise. Horrible. And that's what happens. That often happens. So the statement by the word vivavati, flourishes, is complete, qualifying it with the adjective adbhuta gun, wonderful qualities, creates the fault of redundancy. Not only redundancy, but less powerful redundancy. Tina pade anu prashna deki anupam ekapade nahi e dosha bhagnakram. There is extraordinary alliteration in 3 lines of the verse, but in 1 line there is no such alliteration. This is the fault of deviation. Deviation, we know about that. And you have 4 stanzas of a verse, and you have alliteration, repetition of sounds in 3 of the verses, but in the 4th line you don't have any alliteration. Then someone would say, well, what happened here? Yadyapi shloke ache pancha alankar, e pancha doshe shloka koila charakar. Although there are 5 literary ornaments decorating this verse, the entire verse has been spoiled by these 5 most faulty presentations. It's just one verse he's analyzed, and there are 5 good qualities, but those are more or less deemed insignificant because there's 5 glaring mistakes in this verse. Dashalankare jari ek shloka hoy, ek doshe saba alankara hoy koi. If there are 10 literary ornaments in a verse, but even one faulty expression, the entire verse is nullified. Now this is such a good example that Mahaprabhu gives. He says, Shundara Sharira Jaiche Bhushane Bhushita Ekshveta Kushte Jaiche Koraye Vigita. One's beautiful body may be decorated with jewels, but one spot of white leprosy makes the entire body abominable. So sometimes, what is white leprosy? Sometimes we see people, they have pigmentation throughout their whole body, but there may be spots on their body where all of a sudden they have like albino spots on their skin, where their whole skin has pigmentation, but somehow or other, due to some kind of bodily fault or disease, some of that pigmentation goes away, and there's just some white blotches on their skin, and that's called white leprosy. And they may be very nicely decorated with jewels and necklaces and ornaments and everything, but somehow or other that makes their appearance look, you think, oh, poor person. Yeah. One's beautiful body may be decorated with jewels, but one spot of white leprosy makes the entire body abominable. And you say, oh, she's so nicely decorated. It's too bad she's dead. You know, they have an open casket. She's very nicely decorated with jewels and everything. She's so beautifully decorated. Her jewels are amazing. Too bad she's dead. And you can see that clearly. Rasan lankara vat kavyam dosha yuk ched vibhushitam shad vapu sundaramapi svitrenai kena durbagam. As one's body, although well decorated with ornaments, is made unfortunate by even one spot of white leprosy, so an entire poem is made useless by a fault, despite alliteration, similes, and metaphors. So if you have some glaring fault in your composition, it doesn't matter that you have so many admirable qualities in the composition, but this one terrible fault will make all the other attributes seem meaningless. Now, I could say something about modern politics, but I will not do so because it would be considered too political. But if you have a biography written by somebody and it has some glaring mistake in it, you would not really appreciate that very much. Panchalankara ebe shuna vichar dui shabda lankar tin arta alankar. Now hear the description of the 5 literary embellishments. There are 2 ornaments of sound and 3 ornaments of meaning. So now Mahaprabhu, he's given 5 faults. Now he's giving the positive elements. Shabda lankartin pare ache anuprash Sri Lakshmi shabde punar uktavad abas. There is a sound ornamentation of alliteration in 3 lines. And in the combination of the words Sri Lakshmi, there is the ornament of a tinge of redundancy. Why redundancy? Because Sri means Lakshmi, but it's also used as a word. We'll say, you know, we'll also say Sri Prabhu or Sri Vishak or Sri Lakshmi. We'll say, because Sri, we use the word Sri as you know, a word of esteem. But Sri also means Lakshmi, so he's saying if you say Sri Lakshmi, it's correct. And it has a good quality in that there's a tinge of redundancy. Sri means Lakshmi, but at the same time it's also Sri or Srimati. They're very nice. They're very nice words of glorification. Pratama charane pancha ta karera panti Shatiya charane hoy pancha refastiti. In the arrangement of the first line, the letter ta occurs 5 times. In the arrangement of the third line, repeats the letter Ra 5 times. In the arrangement of the first line, the letter Ta occurs five times. So that's the alliteration. And the arrangement of the third line repeats the letter Ra 5 times. Chaturta charane chari bhak kara prakash ateva shabdalankar anuprash. In the fourth line, the letter Ba occurs 4 times. This arrangement of alliteration is a pleasing ornamental use of sounds. So, this alliteration, it sounds good. Now, you can have alliteration in what is called, what's the word? Jagaro. I think it's called Jagaro. It means, it means like, or maybe I'm using the wrong word. Doggerel. Doggerel is the word. Doggerel means like kind of nonsense poetry. It sounds poetic, but it's faulty composition. Like doggerel means like, the boy sat on the burning deck eating peanuts by the peck. That's not poetry. It just rhymes, but it's really doggerel. The boy sat on the burning deck eating peanuts by the peck. What is the poetic value of that? So in the fourth line, the word ba occurs 4 times. This arrangement of alliteration is a pleasing ornamental use of sound. So doggerel means it's not really poetry, but it may have alliteration. Sri Shabde Lakshmi Shabde Ek Bastu Ukta Punar Uktva Prayabashe Nahi Punar Ukta. Although the word Sri and Lakshmi convey the same meaning and are therefore almost redundant, they are nevertheless not redundant. So, okay, that's good. That's nice. Sri and Lakshmi, they're almost redundant, but at the same time they're not redundant, so that's a nice effect. Sri Jukta Lakshmi Arte Artera Vived Punar Uktavad Avasha Shabdalankar Bed. Describing Lakshmi as possessed of Sri opulence offers a difference in meaning with a tinge of repetition. This is a second ornamental use of words. Lakmir Eva Artalankar Upama Prakash Ara Artalankar Ache Nama Virodavas. The use of the word Lakshmi Eva, like Lakshmi, manifests the ornament of meaning called upana, analogy. There is the further ornament of meaning called virodabhash, or a contradictory indication. So these are all positives. Gangate, Kamala Janme, Shabara, Shubhoda, Kamala Gangara Janma, Atyanta Viroda. Everyone knows that lotus flowers grow in the water of the Ganges, but to say that the Ganges takes birth from a lotus flower seems extremely contradictory. Ihan Vishnu Parapadme Gangara Udpati Viroda Lankara Iha Mahachamakriti. The existence of Mother Ganges begins from the lotus feet of the Lord, although this statement that water comes from a lotus flower is a contradiction in connection with Lord Vishnu. It is a great wonder. Ishvara Chintya Shaktye Gangara Prakash Ihate Viroda Nahi Virodabhas. In this birth of the Ganges, by the inconceivable potency of the Lord, there is no contradiction, although it appears contradictory. Lotuses grow in the Ganga, but how does the Ganga come from the lotus? That seems contradictory. Ambujam Ambuni Jatam Kvachit Apina Jatam Abuja Dambu Murabidi Tat Viparitam Parambojan Mahanadi Jata. Everyone knows that lotus flowers grow in the water, but water never grows from a lotus. All such contradictions, however, are wonderfully possible in Krishna. The great river Ganges has grown from his lotus feet. So I started a little late, and I'm going to go a little late, so just to finish the chapter. Gangara Mahatva Sadhya Sarana Tahar Vishnu Parupati Anumana Alankar. The real glory of Mother Ganges is that she has grown from the lotus feet of Lord Vishnu. Such a hypothesis is another ornament called Anuman. Okay. So Anuman means a hypothesis. What is the hypothesis? That the Gangas come from the lotus is the hypothesis. No, that the Gangas come from the lotus feet of the Lord. That is the hypothesis. That is explaining how the Gangas come from a lotus, because it's grown from the lotus feet of the Lord. Come from the lotus stala. And how was that possible? Well, for one thing, nothing. If no other reason, you can understand that when the Lord Vamana expanded himself as Arukrama, whose steps are very wonderful, his toe pierced the covering of the universe, and through that hole caused by the Lord's toe going through the covering of the universe, the Akash Ganga entered with great force and was caught on the hair of Lord Shiva. But it came from the lotus feet of the Lord, because that's what. And Lord Shiva took the Lord's foot water on his head. It's really what. Stula e panchados panchalankar shukma vicharye jali achaye avar. I have simply discussed the 5 gross faults and 5 literary embellishments of this verse, but if we consider it in fine detail, we will find unlimited faults. That's very powerful to say. If we analyze it scrutinizingly, I'm just giving a superficial reading, but if we analyze it scrutinizingly, we can find unlimited faults. I've just given you a general criticism. But if we want to go into it in detail, we can bring forward more. Pratibha Kavitva Tomar Devata Prashade Avichara Kabye Avashyapare Doshabade. You have achieved poetic imagination and ingenuity by the grace. You have achieved poetic imagination and ingenuity by the grace of your worshipable demigod. That's Mother Saraswati. But poetry not well reviewed is certainly subject to criticism, obviously. If your poetry is faulty, then naturally you'll be criticized. As I said once before, I saw one play that devotees put on, and somehow or other it went to a foreign country, and it was being billed at a major avenue for presenting artistic expression in the theater and everything. But it was, I think it was Lord Ramachandra's pastimes presented by devotees. But they, like in one scene, one person was killed, but then at the same time had to exit from the stage, so was supposed to die on the part of the stage where he could kind of get off the stage without being so seen. But unfortunately, was in the middle of the stage when, instead of the edge of the stage, and then was killed, and then had to roll off the entire stage to get off stage. So naturally, the critics, they were like groaning, ugh. Like, you can't present theater like that. Person's killed and has to roll 20 feet to get off stage. Vichari kavitva koile hoy shunirmal shalankara hoile arte kore jalamal. Poetic skill used with due consideration is very pure, and with metaphors and analogies it is dazzling. Shunya prabhur vyakya digvijayi vishmita muke na Nishare Bhakya Pratibha Stambhita. After hearing the explanation of Lord Chaitanya, the champion poet was struck with wonder. His cleverness stunned. He could not say anything. He was speechless. Kahite chahaye kechu na aishe utar tabi vichara ye mane hoya fanvar. He wanted to say something, but no reply could come from his mouth. He then began to consider this puzzle within his mind. Paduya balaka koila mora buddhi laop jani Saraswati more korijachen cope. This mere boy has blocked my intelligence. I can therefore understand that Mother Saraswati has become angry with me. Je Bhyakya Karila se Manusharana he Shakti Nimai Muke Rohe Bale Apane Saraswati. The wonderful explanation the boy has given could not have been possible by a human. The wonderful explanation the boy has given could not have been possible for a human being. Therefore, Mother Saraswati must have spoken personally through his mouth. Etabavi kohe shuna nimai pandit taravyakya shuniami hoila vishmita. Thinking thus, the Pandit said, "My dear Nimai Pandit, please hear me. Hearing your explanation, I am simply struck with wonder. Alankar nahi para nahi shastra bhyash kemone ayasaba arta korile prakash." I am surprised. You are not a literary student and do not have long experience in studying the Shastras. How have you been able to explain all these critical points? Iyashuni Mahaprabhu ati borarangi tahara ridaya jani kohe koribangi. Hearing this and understanding the Pandit's heart, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu replied in a humorous way. Shastra vichara balo mandanahi jani Saraswati jay balaya say bole vani. My dear sir, I do not know what is good composition and what is bad, but whatever I have spoken must be understood, have been spoken by Mother Saraswati. And that's like producing the sentiment in the Pandit. I knew it. He's thinking, why has Mother Saraswati allowed this boy to defeat me in such a humiliating way? And then Mahaprabhu, he says, so the Pandit says to Mahaprabhu, he says, you're just a student of beginning grammar. How have you been able to explain all these critical points? And Mahaprabhu says, in a humorous way, predicating what's the mind of the Pandit, he says, "My dear sir, I do not know what is good composition and what is bad, but whatever I have spoken must be understood to have been spoken by Mother Saraswati." And Iyashuni digvijayi korila nischay Sishu dware devi more koila parajai. When he heard this judgment from Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the Pandit sorrowfully wondered why Mother Saraswati wanted to defeat him through a small boy. Why did Mother Saraswati want to humiliate me? Ajitare nivediba kore japajan sishudvare koilamore eta apaman. Well, they also say, he may think, why did Mother Saraswati want to humiliate me? But we may also consider that pride comes before the fall. I shall offer prayers and meditation to the goddess of learning, the champion concluded, and ask her why she has insulted me so greatly through this boy. Vishnuta Saraswati Ashura Shoka Korala Vichara Samaya Tara Bure Acharila. Saraswati had in fact induced the champion to compose his verse in an impure way. Furthermore, when it was discussed, she covered his intelligence, and thus the Lord's intelligence was triumphant. But don't forget also the sequence. The sequence is also, I will say something, but you first present your points. Tabish Shishya Gana Saha Hasite Lagila Tabish Shishya Gana Shab Hasite Lagila Tashabda Nishedi Prabhu Kabire Kohila. When the poetic champion was thus defeated, all the Lord's disciples sitting there began to laugh loudly. But Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu asked them not to do so, and he addressed the poet as follows. So they all, when he had obviously defeated the Pandit in this way, all the Lord's grammar students, they just began to laugh. But Mahaprabhu said, don't. Asked them, don't do this. Tumi Bora Pandit, Mahakavi Shiromani, Jaramuki Bahirai, Aiche Kavyamani. You are the most learned scholar and the topmost of all great poets, for otherwise how could such fine poetry come from your mouth? So Mahaprabhu asked them not to laugh. It's as if saying, yes, we can acknowledge that the Pandit has been defeated, but not to humiliate him. Tomara Kavit Ganga Jaladar, Toma Samakavi Kota Nahi Dekiar. You are the most learned scholar and the topmost of all great poets, for otherwise how could such fine poetry come from your mouth? Your poetic skill is like the constant flow of the waters of the Ganges. I find no one in the world who can compete with you. Bhavabhute Jayadev Arakalidas Tasabar Kavitve Ache Doshara Prakash. Even in the poetic compositions of such great poets as Bhavabhuti, Jayadev, and Kalidas, there are many examples of faults. Doshaguna Vichar E Alpakorimani Kavitva Karane Shakti Taha Sevakani. Such mistakes should be considered negligible. One should see only how such great poets have displayed their poetic power. Saishivaka Pawya Kichu Nalabe Amar Sishera Samanamani Nahoy Tomar. I am not even fit to be your disciple, therefore kindly do not take seriously whatever childish impudence I have shown. Ajivas Jahakali Maliba Abar Shunima Tomar Muke Shastrera Vichar. Please go back home, and tomorrow we may meet again, so that I may hear discourses on the Shastras from your mouth. Emalini Jagare Gela Duijan Kaviratre Koila Saraswati Aradan. In this way, both the poet and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu went back to their homes. And at night, the poet worshipped Mother Saraswati. Saraswati Swapni Tare Upadesh Koila Sakad Ishwara Kori Prabhu Ke Janila. In a dream, the goddess informed him of the Lord's position, and the poetic champion could understand Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is the Supreme Personality of God in himself. So he's thinking he's a young man who's a teacher of beginning Sanskrit grammar, but then Mother Saraswati reveals to him that he's the Lord. Prate Ashe Prabhu Pade Loila Sharan Prabhu Kripa Koila Tara Kandila Bandan. The next morning the poet came to Lord Chaitanya and surrendered unto his lotus feet. The Lord bestowed his mercy upon him and cut off all his bondage to material attachment. Bhagyavanta, Digvijayi, Safala Jivan, Vidya Bole, Paila, Mahaprabhu Charan. The poetic champion was certainly most fortunate. His life was successful by dint of his vast learning and erudite scholarship, and thus he attained the shelter of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Adi-lila Varanashi, Vrindavanadas, Jai Kichu, Vishesha, Ihan Korila Prakash. Srila Vrindavan Das Thakur has described all these incidents elaborately. I have only presented the specific incidents he has not described. Chaitanya Kaishora-lila, Amritaradar, Sarvendriya Tripta Hoj, Shravane Jahar. The nectarian drops of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's pastimes can satisfy the senses of everyone who hears them. Shri Rupa Raghunath Padijara As, Chaitanya Charitamrita Kohai Krishna Das, praying at the lotus feet of Shri Rupa and Shri Raghunath, always desiring their mercy. I, Krishna Das, narrate Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, following in their footsteps. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports to Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, Adi-lila, 16th chapter, describing the pastimes of the Lord in his childhood and youth. So this is chapter 16, and then next is, of course, chapter 17, the pastimes of Lord Chaitanya in his youth, which is the last chapter in Adi-lila. I might also mention this chapter is the last chapter, which will contain more pastimes of the Lord's youth. It will also contain a resume of the entire of the Adi-lila. So this chapter is long. Let's see. It's more than a third of this book. So that's coming up. Previews of coming attractions. All right. Now we'll sing Hari Harai. Hari Haraya Nama Krishna Charavaya Nama Charavaya Madhavaya Kaishora-lila Nama Gopal Govinda Ram Shri Madhusudan Giridhari Gopinatha Maranama Chaitanya Nityananda Shri Aditya Chandra Garadhara Shiva Sari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Krishna Nitya We've been very fortunate to have Bhakti Lalita with us during these days. Her association presence very wonderful for all the devotees in our ashram and ourselves. And, well,
wonderful for me. So appreciate your gracious hospitality, your holy association, you and all the devotees. Thank you so much. Thank you is not sufficient.
Jai Suparikara Shishi Guru Guranga Gandharvika Giridhara Ju Ki Jai. Jai Jayam Vishnupad Srila Bhakti Tilak Nehriya Maharaj Ki Jai. Jayam Vishnupad Srila Bhakti Nirmal Acharya Maharaj Ki Jai. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahansa Paramajaka Acharya Ashtatara Sadashi Shimad Srila Bhakti Sundar Govinda Dev Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahansa Paramajaka Acharya Ashtatara Sadashi Shimad Srila Bhakti Rakshira Dev Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. Jai Bhagavan Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Thakur Ki Jai. Jayam Vishnupad Srila Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai. Jayam Vishnupad Srila Sachidananda Bhakti Vinod Thakur Ki Jai. Jayam Vishnupad Vaishnava Sarvabhauma Srila Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai. Rupanuga Guru Varga Ki Jai. Namachari Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Shri Rupa Sanatana Bhatta Raghuna Shri Jiva Gopal Bhatta Dasha Raghuna Shad Goswami Prabhu Ki Jai. Prem Se Go Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasudeva Shri Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Vishwabharanya Shri Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Shri Bhakti Kushama Maharaj Ki Jai. Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita Ki Jai. Shri Krishna Das Kaviraj Goswami Prabhu Ki Jai. Sri Chaitanya Saraswati Mat Ki Jai. Sri Chaitanya Saraswati Sevashram Ki Jai. All the assembled devotees Ki Jai. Sri Lalita Devi Ki Jai. Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bol.
Jai.